In this video, we'll learn how to utilize the Granite State College model for reflective analysis to design individualized lesson plans for a specific student. You'll need the following: access to the evaluation form, which can be found on Blackboard attached to the relevant assignment, access to the state standards for whichever state you reside in, the student's IEP with specific goals, any curriculum you might be using, as well as lists of available professionals you might consult with their specializations. You also will need lists of any text resources you might use or consult with their appropriate citation information. You will also need examples of the student's work. Most likely, this will come from your previous experiences with the student. However, if you have never worked with this particular student before, look for business as usual or non-intervention standard classroom work. You could also use the student's recorded present level of performance, or possibly arrange to observe student work prior to beginning your reflective analysis. As we continue into the semester, examples of student work may come from the results of a previous analytics cycle. The following sections of this video will describe how to complete the reflective analysis form. You will hear my voice narrating instructions for each section, followed by a taped discussion in which a university instructor guides a teacher candidate through the process of completing the form. Then the video will show the responses from that teacher candidate being typed into the form in the appropriate section. Section 1A, Measurable IEP Goal. Write down the learning goal for the student, and then write down the relevant curriculum standard.
What you're doing is picking a particular student who might be struggling in a specific area. And you're going to look at their IEP and decide which goal you want to work on. And that goal is related to the core, Common Core standards. Let's look at your measurable IEP goal.
That the student will master his 1 through 9 single-digit mixed multiplication facts.
Okay.
Here in section 1A of the Word document version of the form, we'll type in the teacher's response. The student will master single-digit 1 through 9 multiplication facts. Now we need to add the appropriate curriculum standard. In Texas, the state standards are called the TEX and are available on the TEA website. You'll want to find the specific set of standards relevant to your state. Many states have adopted a series of Common Core standards, which are usually labeled as Common Core and then the name of the state. The particular standard we are looking for is an elementary school standard, specifically a 3rd grade standard. As we scroll through the standards for mathematics, we'll look for 3rd grade, and then find our specific standard. This standard is standard 4F. The student will recall facts to multiply up to 10 by 10 with automaticity. Now that we've identified the relevant curriculum standard, we'll add it to the form. Text Mathematics, Grade 3, 4F. Student will recall facts to multiply up to 10 by 10 with automaticity. Section 1B, Measurable Lesson Objective. Write down what specific task or tasks the student should be able to accomplish at the end of a 2-week period.
So you're going to pick that kind of overarching goal, decide what you want to work on specifically, and then you're going to make that into a more specific or narrow focus goal, something that you can work on within a week or two. So it definitely needs to be measurable, and something that if you work with a student, you think you'll see progress within a week or 2 weeks at the very most. Okay. And so then you broke that down into a learning target that was more measurable and that you thought you could work on within a week or two. So what was that?
I chose to do his 2s, 5s, and 10s because I know he knows some of them, and recognizing the reciprocals.
Okay.
Under section 1B of the form, we'll add the teacher's specific learning goal, that the student will master his 2s, 5s, and 10s multiplication facts, as well as recognize relevant reciprocals. We want to step away from the form for a moment and talk about setting good goals. Try to use the SMART framework for setting your goals. That is, set goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time limited. It is also very important that any lessons you plan be direct instrumentation, so that you can record a measurable outcome. Section 1C, Current Evidence. Write down evidence of current student work and make sure that this evidence is relevant to the standard from section 1B.
Okay. And then what evidence did you gather relevant to your learning target that will lead to the analysis of the next steps.
I tested him on those 3 areas, his 2s, his 5s, and his 10s, to see what he knew, how confidently he knew them, and simply did that with flashcards.
We'll go to the form and add the teacher response that she tested the student on his 2s, 5s, and 10s multiplication facts with flashcards. This section really needs a measurable number associated with it, so a better response would have had that number added. Perhaps something like, of 100 flashcards, he got 40 correct, or it took the students 20 minutes to finish a stack of 100 flashcards correctly, or student missed problems with the higher number preceding the lower number 3 times as often as the corresponding reciprocal. When we talk about what makes good evidence, we are looking for quantitative data. This is evidence that can be put with a number or associated with some sort of number. In education, this is often a test score or a grade on evaluation, maybe the number of attempts it took a student to complete a task, the time spent on a task, how often a student can complete a given assignment, or ratios of any sort. As we will eventually look to show graphically that our lessons caused a change in student performance, make sure your evidence can be plotted on a graph. It is very important that you have a data point from previous student work so that later in the process you can measure if your intervention has really impacted student outcomes. Section 2. Questions from the evidence located in Section 1C. Write down any questions that occur based upon your study of the current evidence from student work.
Based on your data, what questions arose?
I wondered what strategies he knew that he wasn't utilizing without my prompting, what areas he struggled the most with, and if he was able to conceptualize what he was doing. So if he even understood what 2 times 2 was.
In the form under section number 2, we'll add those questions. What strategies does the student know that the student does not utilize without prompting? With which specific facts does the student struggle the most? And does the student have a conceptual understanding of multiplication? Section 3. Professional Learning Network Response. Write down any professionals you engaged with and their comments. Then write down any resources you consulted and the ideas you found.
And you want to talk to different people, your professional learning community within your school, and talk to them about what they think might be helpful in working with that student. So for example, depending on the student's need, if it's a student who's struggling in math, you might talk to math teachers. You might talk to the learning disability specialist in the school. And whoever those people are, you're going to keep track of who you've talked to and kind of their ideas. What do they think might help that student? There, who did you talk to? Who was your professional learning community that you were able to do reflective collaboration with to decide on some next steps?
I spoke with the 8th grade case manager, who is my mentor, and she gave me some strategies she's used in the past with students like this one. I also spoke with the math teacher to see what manipulatives he had to offer.
Okay.
In section 3 of the form, we'll note the teacher collaborated with the 8th grade case manager and discussed some specific educational strategies, as well as to discuss manipulatives with the math teacher. This reflective process uses the term professional learning network, which is a slightly broader term than the more common professional learning community. Your PLN is composed of all the resources that you might use to determine classroom practices. Most often, this is other people like other teachers, professionals, and specialists. However, your PLN also includes text, web, and similar resources. Be sure to add these to Section 3 if you use them. Section 4A, Academic or Behavioral Strategy. Write down the tasks, approaches, strategies, and materials you will use in upcoming lessons. Also make sure you write down the identified learning target.
And then what did you decide would be your next steps as far as actually working with the student, the duration, the frequency, and so on and so forth?
I looked at setting weekly goals on mastering certain times tables. So the first week I wanted to focus on mastering his 2s, 5s, and 10s and recognizing that they were reciprocal. So 10 times 2 and 2 times 10 are the same answer and same problem. We also started looking at strategies that can be used to solve multiplication facts that he did not know.
Okay.
So So I meet with the student every day for math. He is in a pull-out math program. So my plan is to spend only about 10 to 15 minutes a day, try not to overwhelm him. One day we'll work on filling in the blank multiplication chart. Another day we'll look at using manipulatives to visualize what the multiplication facts are. So if it's 9 times 2, giving him 18 pennies and trying to have him show me what 9 times 2 looks like, to see if he can conceptualize what he's learning and show it to me. We'll also use Cuisenaire rods to do the same type of visualization, just giving him a lot of different resources to use to practice.
The first strategy noted was to set weekly goals for the student, and for the first week, that goal was to master the 2's, 5's, and 10's multiplication facts. The teacher also wanted the student to recognize reciprocals for his 2's, 5's, and 10's. This teacher had a number of different strategies, and that variety was a strategy in and of itself. To save you having to watch me type all of them out at once, I'm going to input all of these strategies into the Word version of the form. Section 4B, Impact on Learning Outcomes. Write down why your strategy is a strong choice for this student. Write down exactly how the strategy will affect learning outcomes for the student. This information was mostly in the last video clip, but is largely about why this set of strategies will work for this particular student. The teacher notices that the student prefers visualizations and enjoys working with manipulatives. The teacher also notes that the student is easily distracted, so she wants to keep a short, focused work time. The teacher also worries that the student may struggle conceptually, so she will try to vary the daily tasks and draw connections to the core concept of multiplication. The end goal is still automaticity, so she wants practice with the facts to be a daily occurrence. Section 4C, Measurement. Write down how you will measure the student's future performance, and then write down how you will know if this strategy is working.
How will you know that your plan is working?
I plan to see how he's showing me his skills. So I'm going to ask him to demonstrate something and see if he can do it successfully. And if he can do it for 2 times 2, also asking him to do the same visualizing for another multiplication fact and see if he can successfully do it multiple times. Then at the end of the week, I'll retest him on just his 2's, 5's, and 10's to see what progress we've made.
Great.
Under Section 4C, this teacher would write that she plans to ask the student to demonstrate conceptual knowledge using manipulatives and ensure that conceptual knowledge covers both easy and difficult multiplication problems. Then she plans to give a formal retest of the 2's, 5's, and 10's multiplication facts at the end of the week. When we discuss good measurement, we want to look at measures that are both valid and reliable. Put very simply, valid means the behavior is relevant to our outcome, and reliable means the behavior can be repeated by the student. For the purposes of this process, you will want to make sure that your final form of measurement is similar, ideally exactly the same, as the measure by which you determined your student was initially struggling. Since the teacher in this example determined her student was struggling with a set of flashcards, it would have been good practice to check his final progress with the same set of flashcards. If the intervention had been successful, he should complete the set in less time with fewer mistakes. Please don't forget to put your name on the sheet, save your work, and then upload your completed analysis to Blackboard.